Today's webinar is on why self-employment is a good option. So a little bit about me, I'm Daman Wandke, founder and CEO of Wandke Consulting. I'm an entrepreneur. I got 2 degrees from Western University. My undergrad in management information systems and my MBA. I'm an IT accessibility expert. I do a lot of advocacy at the national level around disability, and I'm a member of multiple nonprofits. In my free time, I love to travel and ride my bike, and I have cerebral palsy. So as we get started, I wanted to give a little of my early employment history. Back in high school, it was difficult for me to find employment because I couldn't do more high school jobs. I did do a lot of volunteering in high school at the YMCA day camp, at United Cerebral Palsy, and in student leadership and clubs. At the volunteering for a couple of years at the YMCA, they said that when I turned 16 that they would hire me as an employee, but right after I turned 16, they said something happened and they no longer could hire me. Although in student government, I ran for AFB president, and my friends overheard students say that they believe I was qualified, but not sure I could do it because of my disability. And this really is where my disability advocacy career started. I also started building websites for my friend's parent company in high school. Right after high school, I got an internship supported by the youth program at the University of Washington and started to build a wide network for leadership opportunities. I was appointed to the National Council on Disability Youth Advisory Committee my senior year of high school. And in college, I got involved in the Student Advisory Council of the U.S. Business Leadership Network, now called Disability In. I've been received support for vocational rehabilitation to get my undergrad and MBA degree. Throughout my career, I made a lot of employment violence. At one job, I was told I cannot come to the office without my PTA, and I cannot have my coworkers bring any help. Even though at the office, I didn't really need all that much help. I also found that there are more inaccessible office spaces than most people realize. At one of my jobs, they had to install a long metal ramp down an outside stairwell, and then because I can't open doors that are not automatic, I had to knock on the window to get someone to open the door and let me in. At another job, I was not allowed to speak on client calls due to my brief, and I could only speak on call if someone else was transcribing what I said. I also applied for internship in college, which I did not get. But later, I became good friends with an employee of that business. They were told that I was not hired because I could not answer the phone. When out and about, sometimes people interact with me by using what I call baby talk. One time I was getting my hair cut, and the stylist kept talking to me like a baby. I finally told her I am not a baby, I am a college student. Her response was, "Oh, you don't look that old." I joked that I need to carry around a pocket copy of my resume to prove to people that I am not a baby. Then again, they might think that I am so inspirational. These biases that I face out and about carry over to job interview and workplace. The ADA has the term reasonable accommodation that are protected rights, but the term reasonable is relative. The ADA and other laws are the minimum and they cannot cover every need. The ADA will pattern full employment opportunities for the disabled community, but over time this has not been achieved, going from 13.7% in 1990 down to 12.5% in 2020. Although the ADA doesn't protect people with disabilities from being paid some minimum wage in certain industries. So now I'm going to dive into two of the work experiences I had with a little more detail. I have worked from home for most of my career. While earning my MBA, I coordinated web accessibility remotely for a federal government agency. I would fly from Bellingham, Washington to Washington, D.C. every couple months to visit the office and have meetings with coworkers. When our office hired a new supervisor, she emailed me the day I was flying out to the office and said that she required me to always have my PCA at the office. I explained to her that I only needed help with small tasks like stapling papers or opening doors that are not automatic. Her response was stapling your papers is not in our job description. Even though this accommodation was paid to my employer, it was not considered reasonable by my supervisor. In another job, my boss will not allow me to speak on client phone call without someone typing what I said. They were worried that people may not understand me. The job had a disability-related focus. Should it a part of the organization focus be teaching others how to interact with people with disabilities? It is okay for people to ask me what I just said, and there are not always a transcriber available in the real world. Another big issue I have faced is in-home care. In-home care leads to the ability to work, which leads to us being able to pay more taxes to the government. In college, I had in-home care covered by Medicaid, no problem. But after getting my MBA and moving to Virginia, my Medicaid plus in-home care service was cut off because I made too much money. In turn, this lowered my quality of life. If I would have paid for the amount of in-home care services that I got in Washington in Virginia, it would have got me right under the limit, but I couldn't afford that due to the cost of living, so I minimized my in-home care that I paid for out of pocket, which lowered my quality of life. Finally, after 2 years, I decided that that wasn't working, and I asked my employer if I could move back to Washington State, where I worked remotely. Even in Washington State, my salary at the time did not allow me to get in care. So I chose to cut my work hours down to 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week in order to qualify for in-home care. I actually made more money by working 4 days a week than I would have working 5 days a week and paying for my in-home care out of pocket. Then I used my story to advocate for getting rid of the income limit for in-home care in Washington State. But luckily, a couple of years ago, they removed that limit. But unfortunately, in a lot of states, there's still an income limit for qualifying for in-home care. Eventually, I decided that self-employment would be the best option for me. I did a little bit in high school building websites for my parents, but now I decided to go back to self-employment. My remote job was getting more difficult because I was not in the office where I could interact with people. And after a while, people kind of forgot I was out working remotely on the other side of the country. I also realized that self-employment would give me the flexibility I needed to be both successful and have a good quality of life. I decided to create a startup company to help make travel easier for people with disabilities because of my experience in travel. That startup company was AbiliTrek, was I run as a hotel booking service for people with disabilities. We provided a profile to that user could fill out just once expressing their accessibility needs. We would then book a room to get the travel needs. Our motto was and still is accessibility and not one size fits all. Even without calling ahead, the hotel still didn't know what they offered. And often what they said to be there were not always what was there, which made our client very unhappy. We shifted away from the original mission of the AbiliTrek for the same reason we started the company. We saw that education would be more valuable. And so in 2019, AbiliTrek transitioned to a search and review platform. We continue the idea that accessibility is not one size fits all. Even after the transition, the search and review platform were not taken up. I consider this to what I call the chicken or the egg problem. We needed users to collect the data, but without the data, we could not attract the users. So we needed reviews to attract users, but we also needed the users to do the reviews. When we figured out that this was not feasible, we began consulting more. Around this time, I was lucky enough to be met with a mentor from the Disability and Supplier Diversity Program. And around this time, my main goal was to rebrand my company from a startup to a consulting firm. The program met me with a mentor at a large corporation that could help me meet my goals. My mentor and her team helped me ensure that my website and sales collateral have the right method for my potential clients. She also helped me network with supplier diversity professionals at other corporations. My consulting revenue has now doubled since I have relaunched my consulting company. A little bit more on mentoring. Having mentors and being a mentor has been a big part of my life. Many mentors from many different places have invested in my journey. I have had the ability to glean out of what they do to gain experience myself. Due to see my growth when being mentored, I now mentor other people with disabilities, investing in the next generation of young leaders with disabilities. Mentoring is a huge piece to my success as an entrepreneur. So in July 2020, AbiliTrek rebranded Wandke Consulting. We move from working with consumers to working with business. We want training sessions to educate organizations on what they could do to make their organization more inclusive to the disability community. Organizations cannot implement change that they do not understand. Now, organizations look to us as their trusted advisor to help them include the disability community. We provide the real-life experience that we have of living with disability. We also empower organizations by providing tools and information they need to incorporate accessibility and inclusion into the foundation of the practice. We also survey in 4 different areas at Wandke Consulting. First is web accessibility, where we offer technical and functional accessibility testing and remediation to ensure that websites are accessible and compliant. We also provide disability inclusion training and other training like this one to organizations looking to bring accessibility to the forefront of the DEI conversation. We also offer expertise as keynote speakers for conference webinars and events. The third area is curriculum development, where our disability inclusion expertise helps organizations develop curricula that increase disability awareness within organizations or can be provided as resources for the disability community. Most of this work is for other disability nonprofits where we offer our expertise as people with disabilities. We also offer our unique perspective as people with disabilities in including marketing, allowing us to serve as advisors on social media, advertising, PR, and marketing campaigns. So since skills that prepare me for self-employment, and I worked in the three areas: technical, business and management, and networking skills. In the technical skills, I got some of it from my undergraduate degree in management information systems, but also a lot from my real-world experience working in IT accessibility roles in previous jobs and internships. For business and management skills, I learned a lot of it from my MBA degree, as well as learning early on how to manage my personal care of fitness, starting my freshman year of college. The third one in networking, where I built a lot of networks that supports me today as well as I support them with what we offer at Wandke Consulting. I built the network through many of my volunteer leadership positions, as well as attending business conferences and events. Because I built a large network, is the reason why when we rebranded the company, we rebranded it Wandke Consulting, because people know my name, but they didn't necessarily know AbiliTrek. And when they thought about AbiliTrek, they only thought about travel. There are some benefits of self-employment, and I will dive into each of these in more detail. The book one is it really creates flexibility based on your disability needs. Second, there is government benefit flexibility. And third, applying the unique skills and perfection of having a disability. So flexibility. Look, there are no other person determining what accommodations are reasonable because you are your own boss and can decide how you do the work that you do. Many people with disability need additional flexibility to accommodate their disability. For a long time, people with disabilities have always wanted remote work as an option. And employers saw this option as not valid until we all had to go remote due to COVID. And now people with disabilities are hoping that remote work will still continue to be an option. But in self-employment, it will always be an option depending on what you decide to do in self-employment. So self-employment allowed me to create flexible work hours and work environment. Sometimes I might work at home, other times I might work at a coffee shop to be around people. It also allowed me the ability to build a team around me to support me in my work. There are some tasks like typing a lot, for example, that take me longer. So I have built a team around me that can support those type of tasks. I have also been able to create a flexible work environment for my team members with disabilities. I have 5 employees, and the majority of us have disabilities. Government benefits. The all may be able to help with staff equipment costs. Self-employment does apply to SSDI and Medicare tax. SSI, SSDI, and Medicare only count your net income, allowing for more income flexibility. So for example, you have to stay under a certain threshold. You might be able to inject more cost into your business to get your net income down in order to continue receiving your benefits. There are tax breaks for hiring people with disabilities, which provide an incentive to hire other workers with disabilities. And those of us who need in-home care are only granted so many hours. So if I am my own boss, I have more flexibility on when my PCA help me. And if I need my PCA to try to work, I may not have hours available for my PCA to drive me to other appointments that come up. For example, getting my leg brace fixed. We also bring unique skills and perspectives to the table. People with disabilities are typically good problem solvers because we must learn how to live in a world not built for us, which is very helpful when building a business and working through new problems every day. My disability gave me the ability to be an intuitive, flexible problem solver by becoming an entrepreneur due to discrimination in the workplace. Providing accessibility consulting is better from the hand perspective of people with disabilities. But the discrimination I face paved the way for me to be an entrepreneur and help other organizations avoid the pitfalls of discrimination. So 2 years ago, I started teaching disability studies at Western Washington University. I got the job because someone in my network knew the opening and said that I would be good for the role. Being an instructor has many of the same benefits of self-employment, but every university employee. This gives me the stability of a set wage and full benefits. But I also still have a lot of flexibility. I set my own class schedule and I decide when and how I do my work outside of class. Although my teaching, I sit with tasks that are difficult / time consuming for me, like managing media in the classroom or grading small assignments. I find that this does pair nicely with my self-employment work. Breaking stereotypes. With the correct implementation, people with disabilities can work. Self-employment is a good option because it removes employers allowing the disabled person to be their own boss, and disabled people typically know their own needs. Their empathy can also lead to jobs for other disabled workers. Disability drives innovation. Many disabled entrepreneurs create design and services that are not only beneficial to the disability community, but to everyone. Some final thoughts about my journey. Through my internship in the early class, I was able to gain experience in many roles and environments. I have had to figure out ways to still receive my in-home care while being employed in order to maintain a good quality of life. I can now apply what I learned to help other organizations be more accessible. All my experiences have helped me become more innovative, which in turn has provided me with an expertise to empower organizations to include disability in their DEI initiatives. I contribute much of my success to the many mentors I have had, and I now pay it forward by mentoring the next generation of leaders. Thank you for joining, and please feel free to email any